Arco was there, sort of going, I hate these guys, they're just spectacular, they're not sort of, just not consistent. I want someone who can play full quarters, I want someone to take a great mark and then do nothing, I just don't like it. With a bit of spit coming out, So anyway, we got to the first game and it sort of went okay. And we actually were about 3-3 at the start of the year, so we were having trouble adjusting to Parko's way of doing things. And then really after about round 5 or 6, we just got going. And part of that was Buzz. And the thing Buzz did, for those that aren't sort of really into the technicalities of footy, what used to happen around in that period was the half-back flankers basically got the ball, they'd hair up the ground, bounce a couple of times and kick the ball into the goal square. And that was fundamentally the way most of the sides played. What didn't happen is that when these half-backs got hold of the ball, they really got tackled. The forwards were still on the ball's gone, they'll just sit around and wait for the next one. Buzz brought in what Parko wanted everybody to do, but nobody actually did, which was chase out the half-backs. And so these guys would be there getting the ball, they'd bounce a couple of times, and suddenly Buzz would tear them down. And they just didn't know what to do with it. And so you get that instability in the back line that really, you were the best exponent of it. Basically, just if you didn't get the footy, you certainly made sure that if someone else got it, they gave it back. And it was one of the key planks that we built that 81 side on. So, congratulations, Buzz.
Yeah, well done. Maybe Buzz was the inventor of what we call today forward pressure in the forward line players. And I believe there was a game, Buzz, where I think it might have been against Essendon, where you were credited with something like 17 effective tackles in one game. Is that right? Yeah. So I think that pretty much illustrates the point you're making, Bob.
It would have been at least 17.
At least that's what he told me anyway. I think that number keeps growing every year or two. So, what was the feeling amongst the team when both Buzz and Kenny Hunter came over from the West? Did you think that these were the guys that were going to be the missing links in what was missing in 1980, or did you really not know and you weren't sure?
I think at the start of every year you get a group of recruits and you've got to try and assess how you're going to deal with things. And when they've got big reputations like these two did, I mean, Kenny, basically when you looked at him, you're sort of going, really? It's going to be a sort of centre half-back flank. I think
he wasn't all Australian, you know. 3 times.
When he first turned up, I think one of the blokes was saying, great reputation from Perth. Where do you play? Half-back flank, and he's gone, Dooley, Control, good luck. But he was terrific. And of course he could go forward too, which was...
Well, you're also Western Australian, so had you heard about these guys before? From your contacts and family back then?
I'd heard a lot about them. They were kind of about 5 years behind me. And so I didn't know them all, but yeah, they came out. They just had terrific reputations, and so they should have. But the adjustment to Victorian footy there was a fair bit of adjustment both in aggression of the footy. The Victorian players generally weren't as skilled, although they were better performing under a lot of pressure, and there was less. You just had less time. So how they got to adjust to that was always interesting, and. With Kenny, I guess we sort of, the question mark really was whether he was getting big enough, strong enough to survive it. But he was so wiry, he was able to do so.
Brave player, wasn't he?
Just a great player.
And Buzz, tell me, how did you feel about playing alongside the great man here next to you in 81, 82 and 83? He was your captain, and had you heard much about Mike FITZPATRICK?
Oh yes, of course, and I think the whole side was, they won 79 of course, Mike, 79,
Yeah.
So the nucleus of the great side was there, and as Mike said, 1980 probably slipped away from us. You know, and I think David Parkin talks about it, doesn't he? 79, 80, 81, 82, we could quite have easily won 4 in a row, which would have been outstanding. But, you know, we made amends in 81, and I don't think we were going to be beaten in 81, but halfway through the third quarter, Fitz, at the grand final, I heard that Collingwood, and then the great Wayne Harms did a couple of great things. Jimmy kicked a goal, and I think being 24 points down at three-quarter time, we're only about 8 or 10, and David come down from the stand, didn't he, Fitz, and said, they've stopped. You'll run over them, and just what a great coach David Parkin was, because he could read the situation very, very well. And, you know, he had the side that was going to implement, you know, what he wanted. And, you know, was win at all costs. And as Mike said before, that's all Carlton want, you know, premierships. And, you know, hopefully this year we're going to be very, very close. Maybe not this year, but, you know, let this side evolve into a good side. That's what I'm hoping that will happen in the next year or two for the Carlton Footy Club.
Let's hope so. And David Parkin, of course, was meant to be here this evening, and unfortunately couldn't make. But Mike, you obviously played under him and held the cup up high in 2 consecutive years. How did you find him as a coach of this very talented group of footballers, but often, you know, had to be kept in check in some ways?
Yeah, he didn't do too well to keep in check. He had spies everywhere.
Spies
everywhere. So if you were caught out drinking during the week, he knew. And the guys worked that out pretty quickly.
Jimmy reckons no, he didn't.
Yeah, well, actually, that's a fair point. He thought he knew, and he couldn't believe the scale of it. But yeah,
were you part of that clan of players that kept going to one pub after another and kept changing? And
of course I wasn't. Monday used to be what was it? The Rising Sun in.
Oh, you had different pubs for different days of the week.
Brunswick. So
right.
I was, you know, pre-season drinks were fair. I thought, you know, you didn't have to. So and if they're in your recruits, they basically got. Inundated is probably the best word. They got associated, you know, got to meet all the players, and so that's the way they had to train hard. You had to train hard and had to party hard. That was the.
And back in those days, of course, after the game, you'd get together with often the opposition and the umpires and people like that. Was that a great experience back in those days?
In those days, basically, you actually formally did that. So after the game, about half an hour after the game, you went into a room where the opposition were there and the umpires were there. And it was terrific. It was terrific because you got to meet all the best players in the competition, and you also got to meet the umpires, which meant on match day you couldn't really get stuck into them because they were kind of, we didn't call them mates, but they were people you met who you respected, sort of.
Friendly enough.
So that, it was a really pleasant aspect of playing footy, which I think's been lost. Simply because of now, as soon as the game's over, the coaches get hold of them and put them in ice baths and that sort of stuff. So we used to go for drinks. Pretty different arrangement these days. But they were. Oh, it was almost the same side, but they were 2 just fantastic sides. And the beauty of 81 was we were expected to win. We got into strife in the third quarter. We were 20-something points down. And as Buzz said, just real ticker from a couple of guys like Harms and Bucks that got us within range by three-quarter time. And then the coach convinced us that they had stopped and they were slowing down everything else, which I think was actually bullshit when you replay.
But so long as he convinced you blokes, that's all that mattered.
That's all that mattered. And so I don't think they kicked a goal in the last quarter. So I think that after the first bounce went down their end, came back.
Yep.
And then we kicked a goal, and then we just kicked more goals.
We had a lot of scoring shots that day. From memory, it might have been about 12-20.
12-20.
92 to
good memory.
10-12-72, was that right? I think that was right. But famous premiership in 81, and the great Bruce Dool, Norm Smith medalist. What a great game he played.
Perfect game. Played
Yeah.
a perfect game. No mistakes.
Yeah.
And that's something people didn't realise about Dooley, is that he didn't make mistakes in training either. So, particularly in Jez's time, he'd be doing circle work, and if you dropped the footy or kicked poorly or whatever, it was 20 push-ups. Dooley never did push-ups. It was something he did. Like at one stage, they thought he'd made a mistake and they sent the runner out. And Dooley sent him back. This was early in Parko's time. He said, I don't get the runner.
The runner came out to Dooley, and Dooley said, no, I don't get the runner. That'd be right.
And so the other thing we'll talk about is 82, which was obviously 10 years after the sort of 73 grand final when Richmond just beat us up.
Yep.
And from then on, we had this reputation of being talented, but not all about to ticket. And it was something as a side we really wanted to reverse. So we had a good go to the second semi-final that year, lost by about 6 goals. Won the prelim out at Waverley against the Hawks, and then came back to play the Tigers at the MCG. And I'd have to say the first 79 and 81, you walk into the ground, you're sort of thinking, we're a good show here. I was just hoping we weren't going to get embarrassed in 82. And but on the other hand, you didn't have anything to lose. You're coming from third spot. You're up against a team that's beaten you a couple of weeks ago, made a mess of you actually. And
Must have been an unusual feeling going into a grand final as underdog.
yeah, it was. And expecting to, if it did get tight, that we'd get beaten up as usual. Which was always an illusion that the press kept running with. And I think from the time the game started, we just gave it what we got and got on top of them early. They got back by half time. Macca broke some poor guy's arm. Tempered his arm, wasn't it? So we started a little bit tougher than we were.
Actually, there was an incident in that grand final of 82 where Bruce Dool looked like he was all at sea, didn't know what to do, and it was when one young lady decided to run out onto the ground.
I think that was a fair assessment. Dooley had no idea what to do. Dooley dominated that grass, and she was in the wrong place. That was that. So, we were actually a bit annoyed because we'd kicked a couple.
Yeah, you had the momentum, you had them.
And we really had them, and that just broke the momentum. So I think it was Jono that actually grabbed her and got her off the ground.
Jono said, that's it, you're not breaking our momentum.
The police who were expected to do that basically just stood the baby line, walked. But then, when we got to the third quarter, the championship quarter, and we absolutely overran them.
Yep.
And the beauty of the whole thing, in the end, we won. The next week we had to play them on the Gold Coast, in Brisbane, as part of Commonwealth Games. So they had a whole week of having to have fun with us. And
We've got an option item there of Buzz taking a fantastic mark in that particular game. So, so you must have enjoyed playing Richmond after that grand final.
Well, unfortunately they won, which sort of got the coach really upset. Everybody else was sort of going,
What, the game in Brisbane?
yeah,
Who cares about that?
My job, because I'd broken my ankle in the final just at the last few minutes,
Right.
was to entertain the Duke of Edinburgh.
Right.
So I'm entertaining the Duke of Edinburgh, and I've got to...
That would have been pretty difficult.
And I've got to introduce him to all the players. And of course, I'm sort of thinking, I don't really know their real names. This is Jono. This is Roy. This is Buzz. The pig. He's really enjoying this. He's got some friends. Sellers, that's not Sellers, right? Sellers. Yeah, Peter Sellers. So, all in all, 82 was pretty good.
Great memories, and of course,
great memories.
And then, of course, 83, we didn't quite live up to those expectations for a three-peat, but we still made the finals. But I think that was pretty much your final year, was it?
That was my last.
Yeah, 83.
Yeah. I think we went out fifth against Essendon. Essendon finally got to knock us out.
Yeah. But they were great days, weren't they? And in no small part because of the great man sitting next to you right now. Any other stories you'd like to tell us to roast the great man before we let you go? Do you remember anything that specifically about him?
I can tell you a story that doesn't roast the great man, but always people are entertained by it, which is, I don't like telling it because it's sort of against me, but so years after 81, 82, we're in an Essendon restaurant, and it's a licensed restaurant, and because it's a licensed restaurant, the booze sort of comes out quickly, but the food doesn't. So have the entree, waiting for the main course. It's 9 o'clock, you got there at 7, no main course still, you sort of go, oh, cheers. So when you hear rattle, you think, main course must be coming out. So I think I need to get relaxed before it comes out, so go out to the loo. And just about to get started, this bloke lines up next to me, and ladies, you've never probably had this, but men have to make a decision as to whether they talk to that person or they don't. So I've gone, service is slow here, isn't it? He's gone, yes, it's slow, but not as slow as you were. Against Essendon at Princess Park. So I've gone back to sit with my beautiful wife Helen, and I said, we are never coming to this. And we haven't. So.
You didn't have many good memories against Essendon, did you? I mean, there was a game in 1981 where you took a little bit too long to hand the ball back to the opposition. You remember that game? Yeah, I think most of us remember, but we don't want to remember. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Fitzpatrick, thank him, please. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there's more to come very soon, but in the meantime, it's time for something a little different. I don't know how else